There's a man by the name of Miles Mathis, and he has made startling claims that scientist Stephen Hawking is not still alive, but has died and been replaced. Yes, you heard that right, Miles Mathis believes Stephen Hawking died in the 80s and has been replaced. Mathis states how he has written several papers critiquing Stephen Hawking, including a long one on his Brave New World series for the BBC. But his findings in his first paper leaked his science research with his faked events research. To conclude that Hawking has been replaced, Mathis states that he basically used simple photo analysis and facial analysis to quickly show that Stephen Hawking is not the same person as the original Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking being replaced should not surprise anyone too much, especially if you know something about ALS. ALS is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. We are told Hawking has had ALS for over 52 years, which is a record by many decades. Jason Becker is the only person who has lived more than 20 years with the disease, so there is about a 3-decade difference between the longest survivor and the second longest survivor. That is a more than 100% difference between first and second place. It would be like Justin Gatlin running the 100 meters in 9.8 seconds, and Usain Bolt beating him with a time of 4.5 seconds. In other words, statistically it doesn't happen. The average survival time for ALS is 4 years. When Hawking was first diagnosed in 1963, doctors gave him 2 years to live. And yet here we are, 52 years later and counting. Should you believe it? Well, no. Like Becker, it appears the real Hawking did beat the odds, and he lived on for about 20 years. But at some point he was replaced. There is no proof he died, but it's safe to assume that is why they replaced him. He was a very useful public relations entity for physics, and they didn't want to lose him. But rather than speculate on that, let us go right to the evidence. It's not proof, since of course you are free to disagree. This is an opinion piece, not a court transcript, and even if it were a stamped court finding, you would be free to disagree with it. You don't have to agree with anything anyone tells you, ever. Remember that. This is nothing more than presented evidence, evidence that's compelling. If you also find it compelling, fine. If you don't, also fine. The picture shown here is the real Hawking. Notice the longish face and skinny neck. Also notice the dark brown hair. Here is another picture of the real Hawking. Let that etch into your brain. This is also Hawking, a few years later. You see that his hair is turning gray. But the thing to notice here is his teeth. Pretty awful, right? Well, it gets worse. Well, no. The next step, apparently, was going from gray to blonde, even in the eyebrows, and a whole new set of old yellow teeth. He also bought some new fat cheeks. Amazing, right? Actually, that is the replacement. That isn't Hawking, as hopefully you can see now that it's pointed out. Go back 2 photos and compare the teeth directly. Not even close. They found a guy with the same nose and big ears, but otherwise they don't look that much alike. This is the guy you have been looking at for the past 30 years. Which means Hawking might not have written A Brief History of Time, which came out in 1988. The date hasn't been pinpointed, but that was about the time they made the switch. The current guess is early 80s, which if true would mean that book was a forgery. You will say, that is just a younger Hawking, before he lost those lower teeth. No, it isn't. You were just showed the younger Hawking, and he didn't look like that. Compare them side by side. Besides, the first picture is Hawking from the 1970s. The second is Hawking from the 1990s. Amazing that he aged 20 years with a debilitating disease, and got younger looking, at the same time, isn't it? Hawking was still looking young in 2007, when he went aboard the 0G plane. See how it says 0G on his shirt? That is from when he went up in the plane, which was in 2007. He was supposed to be 65 in 2007. Looks great for 65? Unfortunately, he already looked older than that in 1982, 25 years earlier. In the photo on the right, his face also got shorter. Normally your face will get longer as you age, not shorter. Here is a more recent photo of the imposter. Again, the teeth are the clue. This may be the same guy as our blonde imposter, but it certainly isn't Stephen Hawking. Go back to the earlier photos. Those 4 lower teeth were supposed to be gone decades ago, filed down to filling nubs. Are we supposed to believe they regrew? Do those look like caps or dentures to you? Would you pay a dentist to replace your teeth with those? No, we are supposed to believe that is what he has left of his real teeth, obviously. But it has just been shown why that cannot be the case. In this photo, do you find the problem? This time it is with the hands. Look at the coloration and texture. Those are waxwork hands. If you can't see it there, maybe you can see it here. Another reason I noticed the hands is that they don't look like ALS hands. In Hawking's biography, they admit that his fingers had already begun to curl in the 1960s. Those with this disease not only can't straighten their fingers, they can't straighten their wrists. In older pictures of Hawking, he has badly curled wrists, with his left hand normally bent sideways. So how did his hands suddenly get so smooth and relaxed in his 70s? Notice how old Hawking looks here. This was supposed to be 1995, but was really 1984-ish. Then how did he look like this in 2007? 12, actually 23, years later with a debilitating disease, and he looks 10 years younger? How does that work? Where did he get those cheeks? You may say something like, yes, I see what you are saying, but I am going to withhold judgment until this breaks in the press. If you are right, it can't stay hidden. Someone will sue or something and a judge will decide. To this I say, don't hold your breath. These things do stay out of the mainstream press indefinitely, since the press is controlled. For example, the truth about the Lincoln assassination still hasn't come out in the mainstream, 150 years later. Odds are, no one will ever decide this for you, so you have to do your own research. If you doubt my analysis, do your own. This is how things now work, and if you want to know something, you have to research it and make your own decision. That is what science is, after all. Not accepting someone else's decision which would be belief by hearsay or reputation. Science is studying the facts yourself and coming to your own conclusions. So the evidence